Thanks so much for joining us. This is Interoperability for School Systems 101. And today, the things that we're going to do a quick intro of what Project Unicorn is, also the Project Unicorn team. We're going to talk about data interoperability in education. We're going to review the education data standards, then talk about some helpful resources and the school system data survey. We'll do a Q&A. So next to the chat, you are going to see a Q&A box. At any point during this webinar, please feel free to pop questions into the chat, into the Q&A or the chat. But if you put it in the Q&A, we will get to that during that ending portion. And then we will tell you about some next steps. And before we introduce ourselves, we're so glad that you're here today. And we think probably most of you got this information due to being on our update list. But if you do not get updates from Project Unicorn, please feel free to sign up at our website, projectunicorn.org. It will be put into the chat. And if you scroll to the bottom, you will be able to enter your email and you'll get updates about webinars, events, resources that come out, all different things from Project Unicorn. All right, and before we get started, I'm going to introduce the Project Unicorn team. So we have Susan Bearden, she is the Director of Digital Programs, and then I am Chloe Sanducci, the Program Manager for Project Unicorn. We are the two that will most likely answer any inquiries, connect with school networks, connect with vendors, and work alongside you to figure out your interoperability journey. Our emails are at the bottom of this slide, and we will actually follow up. So please feel free to take our information down, connect with us. We want to help you as best as we can with your interoperability journey. And for those of you who don't know what Project Unicorn is, or just a recap, it's an initiative of Innovate EDU, and it's a coalition of national education organizations where we're working collaboratively to promote and support the use of data interoperability standards, specifically in K-12. And what we do is we provide resources and support for school systems, for states, and for vendors. And it's fully funded by the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, as well as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And again, we're going to talk about that word interoperability. That is what we're here to do today. So when we say interoperability, what we are defining is the seamless, secure, and controlled exchange of data between applications. And we firmly believe that interoperability can transform teaching and learning by giving teachers the information that they need to succeed and enable innovation in the classroom and in classroom practices to help guide students towards success. So we can think about this in some analogy terms. So an analogy to think of is to consider Legos, Lincoln Logs, and Tinker Toys. If you think about this in just a moment, we'll talk about this within data systems and education, but think of this as an SIS, an LMS, or some other ed tech tool in our analogy. So all three of these toys, or these tools here, they work well within their own ecosystems. Like Legos, they work with Legos, and Tinker Toys work with Tinker Toys, and Lincoln Logs work with other Lincoln Logs. But if you try to mix Legos with Lincoln Logs or Tinker Toys to build a house, you might be able to make some custom built connectors with the help of something like a 3D printer that would allow you to use them together, but it would probably be pretty complicated, expensive, not convenient. It would require considerable technical skill, and it would also be prone to more error or failure and not easily scalable. So we can think about this when we think of the manner in which data is stored. While data may look the same in the user interface of an application, the manner in which it's stored in the backend can vary tremendously among systems. And this makes it really difficult to combine data from different sources and present or analyze it in a meaningful way. So just a few other examples of where we see interoperability within our everyday lives. One great example is Bluetooth. So Bluetooth is interoperability that we see every day. You can use your Bluetooth with your headphones, your computer, your car. You can use the same Bluetooth standard. With this technology standard, you're able to exchange data between multiple devices without complication. Another example is the Wi-Fi standard, and this is why you don't need a special wireless card. And another example is an ATM, how you can use your card within different ATMs to get cash out of it. I think I went one slide too far. There we go. So what is data interoperability in education? Well, it's basically about getting data out of silos. It's much the same when you consider different types of district level data storage systems like an SIS or an LMS, a learning management system, or a student information system. While data may look the same in this user interface of an application, again, the manner in which it's stored in the backend can vary tremendously among those systems. So custom built connectors that you as the school district or the vendor might have created are undocumented, proprietary, and potentially risky to deploy. And this can make it really difficult to combine data from different sources and present or analyze it in a meaningful, understandable way. And I will show you an example of that in just a moment. But when answering the question, why is interoperability important in education? Well, right now, states and districts are just swimming in data that they can't really use. And this is because we have data that is stored in siloed locations. It's really difficult to bring data from different sources together. A lot of that data is not validated, and it often leads to inaccuracies. And with interoperability, it can strengthen your privacy and security of data in transit and at rest. So here's an example of why data interoperability is important in education and how we can see this with real life applications that are being used within school districts. So you can see here in this slide, there's 3 different ed tech tools, and they do different things. There's different purposes for these ed tech tools. One is for assessment, one is an SIS, one is a behavioral merit system. And you can see here in this slide, the problem. The student identifying ID in each of these tools is different. And this makes it very difficult for this data to be shared with each other. You can see the names for data fields are the same, but the way that it's stored is different. You can see that there's issues where there's formats and fields that are different, but also issues where the information that's entered is different. If the tool is standards aligned, it can be much easier to combine data. And for you as the school district or the school system, you can make way more meaningful data-driven decisions if you're able to combine that data. So some challenges that are caused by a lack of interoperability within education. You see educators and staff spending time manually downloading data and manipulating it into spreadsheets. The inability to see data from multiple sources or assessments in one place to make those meaningful data-driven decisions. Students having to leave their LMS and go to external websites and view digital learning content and having to log in and out of different places, and just data being moved in an unsecure and unprotected manner. So here's an example of what interoperability can look like. And in this specific example, we're looking at data flowing into an operational data store. So interoperable standards-aligned data systems store commonly defined data and make it easily available to users in an agreed upon format. Data stored using commonly defined standards mean the same thing even when it is housed in different systems. This allows school systems to easily combine data from separate systems. For example, your SIS data, your LMS data, attendance data, assessment data, discipline behavior data, and so on. And then you can view it and analyze it all in one place. And this is taking that previously siloed info and putting it into one place, an operational data store. You can see here, this is another example similar, but in this example, all of the tools, they're integrating directly with an LMS or a learning management system. So just a few examples of what interoperability can look like within your school district. So when we think about interoperability and we think of the start of that, a great thing to think about is a single sign-on. And if you don't know what a single sign-on is, it allows users to log into multiple platforms using a single set of user credentials. And you can see there's an example here. A lot of us actually use an SSO in order to sign up for different websites. We're able to sign in using our Google that's already created, or sign in with your Apple ID. That's an example of what an SSO is. And when we think about this in education, we like to say that an SSO is the gateway to interoperability. It solves one problem and it's a really great start, but it's not for all use cases. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the education data standards. There's 4 major open education data standards organizations in the US. So in the upper left hand, we have the Common Education Data Standards, or CEDS, and this is the field-driven, federally supported education data standard and management initiative, whose purpose is to streamline the understanding of data across P20 and workforce institutions and sectors. Other standards are actually based on the CEDS data model, and CEDS is largely used by states. In the upper right-hand corner, we have A4L, and A4L hosts the Student Data Privacy Consortium. A4L has standards that are used for rostering, SLDS, student records exchange, and transcripts. And then on the bottom left, we have One EdTech, and One EdTech has standards for K-12 and higher education, including rostering, comprehensive learning records, digital curriculum, assessments, learning apps, learning platforms. And One Roster is a very common use for rostering in K-12. One Roster is a technical specification that allows for the exchange of roster data between LMS and SIS and learning tools. And then lastly, on the bottom right side, we have EdFi, or the EdFi Alliance. And EdFi is widely adopted, it's CEDS aligned, and it's an open source data standard developed by the educational community, used at both districts and state levels. And it's mostly used for SIS assessments and state reporting. We are going to be having throughout this entire month a series of webinars with all of these 4 different standards bodies, and they're going to do a 101 of their standards. So please sign up for those webinars if you want to continue to learn more about each one of these standards. And if you're asking yourself right now, what standards should I integrate with, or what standards should I be thinking about? Well, the answer is that it depends. It depends on your use case. You can ask yourself a couple of these questions and have some considerations like, what do I want to do with my data? Am I looking for an SSO or to roster? Am I looking to integrate learning tools into an LMS? Am I doing state reporting? Are standards currently being used in my ecosystem, for example, state reporting? And also note that you can definitely use multiple standards in one ecosystem. So one really great resource to start thinking about your interoperability journey, especially if you're in the very beginning, is to look at the first 3 steps for K-12 IT leaders. This is a resource created by Project Unicorn, and it's a great place to start to learn more about unlocking your siloed applications and better leveraging your school system's data. Another really great place to start is the School System Data Survey. So we at Project Unicorn, we run a survey that just went live this week. And this is a survey for you to take and for you to learn about where your district and where your school network is at in regards to interoperability. So the school system data survey, it was developed in partnership with our steering committee. And this will be the third year in 2023. We just had our second survey administered last year, which informed a report, which I'll talk about in just a moment. Last year, we had almost 200 LEAs and education service agencies take the survey. And the goal of this survey for us in general is to identify technical support needs and track growth across the sector, across the entire K-12 sector. And just for you to know, as someone who is thinking about taking this survey, some of the things and the value that you will get out of it, you will get a customized report for your school system or for your school network that talks about exactly where you sit as compared to all the other schools that took the survey and the national average. And we will also give you customized resources. We'll also give you a technical assistance call or meeting, and everything that we do here at Project Unicorn is free. It's a nonprofit organization, so our meetings are free, our technical assistance is free. And with that, we will point you in the right direction or connect you with different organizations or different partners. And you will also receive a $25 Amazon gift card for taking the school system data survey as a thank you for helping to inform our report, which I'll talk about in just a moment. And just a little bit more of an insight into what you see in the school system data survey. This is a survey that will take you about 15 to 20 minutes, and you are looking at and assessing where your district or your school network is at along these domains that you see here. We have leadership and vision, governance, technology and infrastructure landscape, implementation fidelity, procurement, and impact on educational environment. And just a little, one little piece of data that we got from our previous survey and from the report that we released in the fall was that governance is one of the greatest challenges that, or challenge areas that everyone has responded they have an issue with for the past 2 years of the report. So that is some insight that we are able to find from administering this survey and then reporting on what we get in our State of the Sector report, which is our annual analysis of the K-12 school system capabilities and infrastructure for leveraging education data. Forgot to move to this slide. Again, those are the domains. And then the State of the Sector report, there's a QR code there if you want to check it out, or they will put it into the chat for you to check out. There is an interactive dashboard on the bottom of the State of the Sector page for you to see some of the data that was analyzed from last year's report. So if you're asking yourself, how can I learn more? Because I know this is a quick, just 30-minute webinar. Well, we're here to help. Project Unicorn is here to help. Again, Susan and I, you can reach out to either one of us. Our emails will be in the slide deck and we will send a follow-up. But Project Unicorn has a whole bunch of resources for you. We have one-pagers or document resources. If you go to our site and you are on our resource library, you can type in school or district to see the resources available to you. We also have an entire bank of webinars, past webinars on our YouTube channel. This webinar will go onto our YouTube channel. So if you think this conversation is something that someone else at your district or another district, you have a friend who might be interested in this, you can send them this webinar recording. It will go into our YouTube channel. And lastly, one of the most important things, you are here already. So you are already starting on your interoperability journey by thinking about where this topic and where your district sits with interoperability. And Project Unicorn has a pledge, and this is a commitment that you are are committing to your interoperability journey to increase the secure access, privacy, and interoperability within your district. So within the pledge, a couple things that you get out of this, it's demonstrating again your school system's commitment to interoperability. This also sends a signal to vendors that interoperability should matter to you and it should matter to them. You get, again, those free technical assistance calls. We also have 4 school districts and school networks scholarships of up to $750 that are available to build your staff capacity for implementing interoperability. You'll be the first to learn about webinars, boot camps, new publications related to data privacy and interoperability. And you will just be joining a community and a network of districts that are all moving towards working on their interoperability journey and becoming more interoperable, just as an entire ecosystem. So we really encourage you to sign the pledge. This takes under 2 minutes. You can do it right now. They'll chat the link into the chat, and then there's the QR code. And we have a few minutes. We have about 5 minutes or so to do a question and answer. So I will quickly open up the chat to see if we have any questions. And I also know that Susan is here as well to answer any questions. So okay, I have one question for you, Susan. So a question that we have is, how would a school system go about defining an interoperability use case?
Hello, everyone. Well, I think it's first important to figure out what problems or challenge do you have that you would like to be able to solve using data. That can be any number of challenges. It can be identifying students who are at risk for dropping out, which you might be able to calculate by combining their grades with behavior and attendance data, along with any other information from their classroom. There may be cases where you may want to determine if there are students who are having trouble with a particular academic concept across platforms. There's any number of potential use cases that you can use for interoperability, but the key starts with figuring out what is the problem that you want to solve. What is a problem that you have you have data that might be able to help you solve it, but you don't know exactly, you can't put that information together. And once you've figured out what your use case is or what it might be, then Project Unicorn team, we can sit and listen. We can set up a technical support call. We can speak with you, and we can tell you, we can sort of point you in the right direction of the appropriate standards that you might want to look into. We are standards agnostic, as I think Chloe mentioned. We don't promote any one particular standard over another, but we do recognize that certain standards are better for certain use cases than others, and we are happy to point you in the right direction for that.
Awesome. Great. And another question that we have is, what resources are available to help me implement interoperability?
That's a great question. Well, first, I'd start by going to the Project Unicorn resource page. If you look at our webpage, I believe the resources link has been added before. Let me just pop that into the chat real quick. We have a whole resource page that is available. Put our resource database. Here we are. And you can check out and see what resources we have available for you there. And that'll give you some great background information and other resources to look into. Again, also, we are happy to set up a one-on-one call with you and help you figure out kind of what your use case might be and what standards might be the most applicable. And I see, Isabel, I see that you have a question in the chat. And you said, I've known about Project Unicorn for years, but I've hesitated to sign the pledge because I don't have the ability to commit my entire district to this commitment. And yes, we completely understand that. Should I build the internal commitment and then sign, or sign and then leverage you all to build the commitment? That's a great question. I think it could work either way. Even if you cannot sign the pledge on behalf of your district, we would be happy to set up a technical assistance call with you. But certainly, if you did sign the pledge, then we can also provide you with those technical support resources. So either way, I think the important thing is if you can get on our mailing list. Chloe, I think you mentioned at the beginning of the webinar that on the bottom of our homepage, there's a mailing list.
Yep.
And that may be how some of you found out about this webinar today. So definitely you can set up calls. You can get on our mailing list, and then you'll be aware of when our new resources are released and when we're planning new webinars. But certainly we would love to have you sign the pledge, but if you can't do it because of district policy, then no worries, we are still available and here to help. So thank you for asking.
Yes, that was a wonderful question. And I also just posted or put into the chat our Calendly link. So feel free, again, you do not have to immediately sign the pledge in order to meet with us. We can also work with you to get the resources that would help you build that commitment from other people within your district. So definitely feel free to put some time on our calendar. We would love to meet with you and start the conversation. This is an ongoing process that we want to work with you on. And just to finish off here, the three best steps for you to do are: first, sign the pledge if you're able to. Again, if you feel like you're not able to on behalf of your district, you can move to the next portion, which would be to set up your free technical assistance call with us. Again, I just put the link to our Calendly into the chat. And then lastly, it's great if you take the 2023 school system data survey. You don't have to be a signatory in order to take the survey. This is just for your information and your knowledge. And then you will know exactly where you sit with regards to K-12 interoperability nationally and where you sit within that national level. And then you can only build from there and we can work from there. Our next webinar, as I mentioned, the series on all of the standards bodies will be on Tuesday, March 14th at 1 p.m. It is going to be Data Standards 101, specifically with the EdFi Alliance. It will be followed by One EdTech, A4L, and then CEDS. So we will have them throughout the month of March, but our next one coming up is going to be March 14th at 1 p.m. and the registration is in the chat. And we want to thank you all so much for joining today, and we hope to connect with you soon. Thank you, everyone.